Hello, and welcome to Rock Your Block. I'm your host, Larry Laws, for this special segment of First Home Alliance. Today's episode of First Home Alliance, we will be talking about the role of the real estate agent. We will discuss some of the unique things a real estate agent does in the community, other than just serve cookies and juice at your open house on Sunday. The goal of this segment is to empower you with the knowledge to help increase and sustain the dream of home ownership. For today's episode on the role of the real estate agent, our special guest is Gwendolyn Walton. Gwen is an associate broker with Keller Williams Realty, and she has many years of experience and certifications in real estate. She is a member of the Prince William Association of Realtors. She's also a member of the Virginia Association of Realtors, member of the National Association of Realtors. She has many professional designations that include a few: accredited buyer representation, accredited distressed property expert, and certified negotiator expert, just to name a few. She's also a certified Virginia Housing Development Authority home buyer education trainer and instructor. Gwen, thanks for all the great things that you do, and welcome to our show today.
Thank you.
Yes. Gwen, that's a long list of great things that you do and qualifications. And I want you to share with our audience today things about the role of the real estate agent. Tell us a little bit about you and being a realtor.
Sure. Well, it certainly is a long list, and it certainly takes a little while to actually acquire a lot of the things that we've gone over. Being a real estate agent, you just have to be licensed in the state of Virginia in order to be a real estate agent. So that starts with getting, doing what we call pre-licensing classes. And so I acquired my pre-licensing classes back in 2004 when I started being a real estate agent. I then went on to go with various brokers, I guess I could say. Right now I'm with Keller Williams. I was with other brokers in the beginning. After acquiring your license, you then are able to practice and be with a broker, and that's how you become a real estate agent in the state of Virginia. Belonging to the National Association of Realtors, that's what makes you have that realtor designation, and that puts you at a higher standard than a regular licensed agent in Virginia. So with that, you abide by the Code of Ethics, which is one of the standards, and so we're tested often on our Code of Ethics, and it just tells how we are supposed to interact with the public. So that makes us a little bit different in that aspect. And so once you're able to be in the association, it then allows you to get the other designations and other training. And so that's what allows that. And so therefore I went on to get my GRI, my ABR, and those are all association accredited designations. So what they do is they get you a little more proficient in handling contracts, negotiating with people, knowing the laws of agency a little bit better, and the ABR allows you to work with buyers. And so since I do a lot of work with first-time home buyers, that designation really comes in handy because it lets you know the types of things that buyers are looking for.
Okay, well that's great. And it sounds like becoming an agent. Now, I also heard you said that what's the difference between an agent and a realtor? What is the difference between those two?
So when you're just a licensed real estate agent, it just says that you are licensed in the state that you practice in, and therefore you abide by the laws of that state. So being a realtor then says that you are in an organization like the National Association of Realtors, and we have local associations for the state and then your local area jurisdiction. So here in Prince William, we have the Prince William Association of Realtors. And so once you belong to that, you then get the higher standard of ethics. Okay. And so that just overlays ethics on top of what you have to do. So it tells you how you have to treat the public, how you treat other realtors in the profession, and how you treat your customers. Okay. And so there's those guidelines that we have to abide to.
That's great. Yes, and okay. And I understand you're an associate broker. And so not only are you a real estate agent, have your license as a real estate agent, you're a realtor, and then you also mentioned that you're a broker. What is a broker? An associate broker. What is associate broker?
So a broker just says that you have gone through extra training. So in the state of Virginia, in order to be able to sit for the exam of broker, you have to at least be an agent for 3 years. So you get your regular real estate license. Once you've done 3 years or more, you're eligible to then take classes, which is another more additional training that you go through, and then you're able to sit for your test to become a licensed broker in the state of Virginia. And so what that does is it allows you to be able to start your own brokerage if you want, but if you choose not to, then you can still remain and do the same duties as an agent, and that's where you get the title associate broker, because you are working under another broker in their brokerage.
Okay. And so if I was looking for a real estate agent, is it okay for me to look for an agent, or should I look for a broker?
Well, you could you could look for a broker, but you could also look for a real estate agent, in the aspect that they both will have the same training, but you know that a broker will have additional training, would be the difference between the two.
Okay, super. Now, as a real estate or associate broker, are you able to, how do you represent buyers? Do you represent buyers and sellers?
Yes, I do.
And what services can you provide to a home buyer?
So there's lots that you can provide to a home buyer, because they have a lot of needs, and when they're doing a contract, they are looking for, helping find the house. And then once they find the house, they need help with getting through their finances. So the more you understand about how getting a loan and that process works, you're able to share that and guide your buyers through it, especially first-time home buyers, because all of this process is new for them. You're able to help with home inspections, negotiation of the contract, which is really huge. There's lots of parts to the contract that a lot of times people don't understand, and there's pitfalls that can be in there. And so working with them, you can help them to know what those pitfalls might be, how to guide them through it. If there's a problem, how to basically go about solving that problem so you can continue on and have a successful deal. Title insurance, working with the title companies, there's just lots that you can help a buyer with.
Yes. And then back to the real estate agent or the associate broker, what is your normal day like being associate broker?
Well, sometimes it can be very structured and sometimes not, but your typical day is going to really start off with, making sure that you're addressing what's going on with your clients and their transactions, and making sure that you stay on top. I like to monitor my clients' transactions, so that I'm keeping them on track, and I'm also keeping the other parties in the transaction on track. So some of the time, initially will be dedicated to that, as well as working with, other people, and also looking for new clients.
Okay. And so, I mentioned about the open houses. And so do you have an open house every Sunday? You just, after, maybe a worship or whatever you do on Sunday, and then real estate agents just go find a house to open up and have a little snacks? Is that a weekly thing? How did that happen?
No, it's not always weekly, and it really depends on the clients that you serve. So you can have sellers that sometimes don't want to have their house open to the public. So, there's times when you are on a weekly schedule. And so those open houses could be open houses that you have yourself, your listings, or sometimes you could be helping out another agent in your office and therefore covering it. So it really depends. It's not always every week, but it's as the schedule goes based on your own listings or what's going on in your office.
Super. Now, I was asking about your week, your day. We talked about your Sundays, but also I understand that you work with some local organizations or agencies. What are some of the things you do in the community with some of those agencies?
Yeah, so I do work with a couple of different agencies. First Home Alliance is one of the agencies that I work with, and I do first-time home buyer classes with them, and those classes are always on Saturdays. And so I also work with the Virginia Cooperative Extension, and I do various tasks for them, some of their first-time home buyer classes, as well as financial intakes. And those are usually done in the evenings, and I've done long-term counseling. The biggest thing that I do for them that extends for a period of time is the parenting classes that I do. And those are 6 weeks classes that I meet with families who sign up to have parenting classes, and those classes last for 2 hours for 6 weeks.
Wow, that's great. That's great work. Back to the first-time homebuyer classes, how important is that education prior to purchasing a home?
That education is real important. There's lots of things that the class goes over. The class is for 6 hours, and so there's definitely a period of time that people are committing to that. But it goes over the financial parts, the credit score, and things like that that will help them prepare in the beginning if they're thinking about looking at buying a home, as well as going into the role of the lender, the real estate agent, how the home inspections go, and then also moving on to the title company.
Okay, and I know I'm quite sure that we'll talk a little bit a little later about maybe what you do for sellers, and I know we're talking about buyers now. Do you think that it actually increases the success rate of homeownership sustainment, this education in the beginning?
I think it does, and I think it really looks at where people come into the process. When you get a homeowner that's actually looking at it in the very beginning, before they get into the contract, and they're really looking at gaining the knowledge that the class has to offer, I think it is very successful in doing that, or can be successful. If you find that you just have somebody who they already have gone through the process and they're already into a contract, and maybe they take it as a last effort just to close the loan, that may not be as successful because they weren't really there to get the knowledge. They didn't have an opportunity to put a lot of that knowledge into practice in the home buying process.
Yes, and so I see that you would say that the education is very important.
Yes.
And we would like to stress to our audience is that it is important in the home buying process, and we would like for them to get that as soon as possible. And we're going to get coming up on a break, but before the break, I would like to encourage you to place working with an agent and, most importantly, home buyer education at the top of the list as you begin the home buying process. Home buyer education is not just for the low-income community. All potential home buyers should attend a first-time home buyer class. First Home Alliance provides first-time home buyer education and coaching, and also provide mortgage default and foreclosure prevention services as well. We have worked with over 1,000 homeowners in the last 4 years. Very few of them are low income. 99% of the home buyers receiving foreclosure prevention services did not attend a first-time home buyer class prior to their home purchase. If you would like to pursue the dream of homeownership, I highly encourage you to attend a first-time home buyer class conducted by a HUD-approved housing counseling agency. You can find a housing counsel agency near you by searching the HUD website. We will be right back after the break with more of the role of the real estate agent. Stay tuned.
Start living the dream of home ownership with help from First Home Alliance. Free orientation classes are held the third Saturday of each month from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. and lunch will be served. Classes include topics like personal finance, credit issues, the lending process, the role of the agent, home inspection, and loan closing. Don't wait. Call First Home Alliance today to register or go to firsthomealliance.org for more information and start your dream of home ownership today.
Welcome back. You're watching Rock Your Block and today's segment of First Home Alliance with our special guest, Gwen Walton. Our episode today is about the role of the real estate agent. Gwen, right before the break, we talked about the education, but prior to that, you mentioned about what you could offer home buyers. Can you tell me a little bit more about you working with a home buyer?
Sure. And so when I work with a home buyer, one of the things that I like to make sure is that they really understand, I start off with interviewing them, and what we do is called the buyer consultation. So I like to sit down, get to know a little bit more about what they're looking for, what their expectations are in their working with a real estate agent, what they hope to accomplish, the type of house they want, all of their criteria and stuff like that, as well as getting to know a little bit more about their financing. So what I feel is that I play a role as a partner in helping them get through that. And so anything that I can do to help that, to facilitate that they know a little bit more, as well as bringing in the real estate components that are important to the transaction. So I, will spend some time with them, figure out what that is. We'll sit and chat. We'll go over some things. We'll look at the MLS, get a better idea. We'll talk about their financing. And then once we get those things squared away, then we actually go out and we start looking at homes.
Okay. There's a word that is thrown around sometime, contract. Well, what is it? Is there some type of contract that you sign with the potential home buyer? What is that called? Can you explain that?
Right, and so that would be our buyer's agreement.
Oh.
And so some people would like to call it a contract,
Right.
and in some ways I guess it is. But it's really an agreement. It's an agreement of how you're going to really work together. So sometimes buyers are fearful of having to sign that because they think that they're going to be trapped into a particular situation or really trapped into working with someone. But in the state of Virginia, it's required that we have one of those agreements in writing in order to be able to go show properties to a potential purchaser. And so it is nice to sit down because at that point, when you go out looking at the properties, you understand how the two of you are going to work together. You understand how the real estate agent gets paid in the transaction and what your obligations are and what their obligations are so that everybody's on the same page and there's no misunderstandings. So it's a nice document to sit down and go over and discuss.
Okay. Now, with this agreement, how long does it last? Is it at one property? Is it 30 days, or how long is that agreement?
And so with all things, it's negotiable. And so
Okay.
that's the great part about it. You don't have to sign a 30-day agreement. So if for some reason you are a little bit unsure, there's been cases where people might sign, I'm going to go out with you this day. So that's the thing. It really kind of takes the edge off because a lot of times people think I have to sign a year-long agreement with somebody. But it is flexible and that you can work it out. But the more you sit and have that first consultation, the easier it is to be able to sign a longer agreement with the agent because you've had some time to spend with them long before you get to the showing part.
Okay. And then back to that word contract. So you understand that you let me know that there's an agreement with the agent and the potential buyer. What about when someone signed maybe an offer or something, and when did that become a contract, or when is it considered a contract?
So when you sit and you make an offer, because at that time a lot of people like to call that the contract, but it is an offer. And so you are offering and putting out an offer to the seller as to what you want to offer them for the property. So when you sit down with your agent and you go over all the terms that you want in there and you send it over to the seller, it is at that time considered an offer. Once the seller looks it over, if they are accepting it and they sign and they send it back to you, that's when it becomes a contract. And so at that point, it's considered a ratified contract because both parties have signed. But when you send that offer over, the seller has the option to reject it or they can counter it. And so if the seller counters it, it's just basically saying that the offer that you put over is dead and that the seller is now putting a new offer on the table for you to review, and then you still have those same options. But once everybody's signatures are there, it then is ratified, and then all of the terms in the contract start moving forward.
Okay. Now, would you recommend that a potential home buyer stay with one agent from start to finish, or what is acceptable?
Well, I think my recommendation is that they stay with that agent, and that's why going around having those consultations or having those talks with an agent first is really important, because you get to sit down and you get to talk with somebody and you get to see if you're able to work together. So you get to see what is their schedule like, what days of the weeks do they work, whether or not they're going to work the days that you want to. So if you happen to have days off during the week or days off on the weekends, you want to make sure that that agent is available. You want to look at what their communication is. So if you've had the opportunity to discuss all that and you're in agreement with them, then it's just that time to pick that agent and then stick with that agent, because now that agent knows a little bit about you, you know a little bit about them, and it makes it a little bit easier to work because then you're working consistently together without interruption.
Okay. Yes. Now, we talked about home buyers, but there's seller as well. Do you work with sellers?
Yes, I do.
And how can you work with a seller?
So with a seller, they have different needs than a buyer. And so a seller is putting their property on the market. And so when a property is listed, it's saying that you're taking that data from the seller and about their property, and you're putting it into our MLS system, and you're making it available to all other agents to view, as well as it going out to public sites so that other potential buyers can view that that property is now on the market. So with sellers, you're looking at getting them the best price for their home, as well as you're still doing some of the same duties because you're looking at the contract. And so when they get a contract from the buyer, you're helping the seller to go through that contract and understand what the buyer is actually offering them and how that impacts them and how that impacts what they're hoping to get out of the transaction.
Okay. And is there a contract with that seller as well? How do that work? And is that called contract?
And that's actually, it's sort of like the buyer's thing. It's called a listing agreement. And so what that listing agreement does is it says that they're putting the property on. It tells when you have to put the property on. It tells what the commissions will be and what will be offered, and all the things that the seller needs to, provide for information in order to get that house listed.
Okay. So there are potential sellers out there that may be weighing the option of a short sale. And so do you work with individuals that are seeking to short sell their home? And what is a short sale?
And so, yes, I do work with sellers who are looking to do a short sale. And so when a seller finds that for whatever reason they need to leave their home, whether it's a relocation, a job change, whether or not, they can't afford their payments anymore, at that time, if they are looking to sell their house, it would be determined what the price would be and figuring out where they are, whether or not they have any equity. So when a seller doesn't have any equity in the house and they owe the lender more than what the market value is, it's considered that you're selling your property short. So at that time, then it would be negotiating with the lender or the servicer of that loan on whether or not that they would accept the short sale.
Okay, and we work with both home buyers and also homeowners that are struggling with their mortgage. But you mentioned a word that is very important, I think, to potential home buyers: equity.
Yes.
And can you explain to our audience what is equity?
So, a homeowner can get equity a couple of different ways in their property.
Okay.
So one of the biggest ways that people realize that they do get equity is when the properties appreciate, which we saw in the last market, and properties were appreciating no sooner than you could leave the settlement table. Mm-hmm. And so that's one way that buyers or sellers or homeowners, I should say, could get equity in their property. And so when we have a very normal market, that equity that way takes a little bit longer to acquire because it's a little bit slower. The other way that they're getting equity is as they pay their loan down. Okay. So if the market's appreciating and they're paying their loan down a little by little, they'll see their equity over time. But just paying down their loan, it could take 10 years before you get some good amount of equity. But that's the difference between what you owe and what the market value of your house is.
That's great. And I think that's very useful information to know that is something to work towards. Most payments are not just going to a landlord, well, you're actually a landlord, but they're not just going away. It's going to, increase the net worth and the value of that home and building something that you can take with you and use. Yes. You mentioned a lot of good services that you offer, real estate agents, realtors that you offer. What is suggested? How do you find a real estate agent? How do you find one?
Good question. Because a lot of people are always looking, how do I find that agent?
Yes.
And so there are a lot of different ways that you can find it. Most people will find their agent because they know somebody who's worked with an agent that they think is a really good agent and has done a really good job for them. So they'll refer that agent, is what we call a referral. And so they'll tell a friend about it. So you might get that referral from a coworker or a family member that says, here's my agent. And so that gives you a good place to start. The other places that you might find them is sometimes you get postcards in the mail that might be an agent, advertising in your community. Sometimes people at work. You could have family members that are agents, and so a lot of people do know agents that way. So those are some of the most common ways that people find it, but in either case, whichever way you find your agent, it's always good to have that consultation with an agent because you still want to make sure that that agent is going to be a good agent for you.
Yes. Well, again, thanks for sharing that information, and also we're going to come near a close, and but in one, I want to say that we have an inbox that questions are come in. And before we close, I would like to share with a question that came into our inbox that I will answer for our audience. The question was, I'm new in the workplace, and managing money is scary. Where can I get help? And the answer to that, First Home Alliance offers monthly classes on financial education. The topics range from setting financial goals, banking services, savings, debt reduction, understanding credit, and increasing net worth. Our classes are free of charge. Please contact our office for additional information and registration. If you have questions concerning financial education or home ownership, email us at help@firsthomealliance.org. Tune in to our next show to see if your question was selected to be shared on the air. We're just about out of time. Gwen, I want to say thank you very much for sharing all that great information and knowledge to the community. We hope that we have shedded some light and answered some of those questions that you may have out there about the role of the real estate agent and the home buying process. Gwen, you are always welcome to our show. And if you have questions related to real estate and you want to talk to the expert, simply contact Gwen Walton. If you want to find out more about services that First Home Alliance provides to the community, visit our website. Thank you for watching Rock Your Block. I'm Larry Laws, reminding you that we are here to empower you with knowledge to help you successfully live the dream of homeownership.